Hi everyone, my name is Adam.
And I'm Zane, and this is A to Z, where we cover any topic from A to Z.
I do realize that Professor French was supposed to be stopping by today. Unfortunately, they couldn't make it for personal reasons. So instead, we have Matt Nefarious.
Hello,
Hello, Matt. Welcome.
that's me.
We just, it was great that we could reach out to you and get you on. For those of you who don't know Matt Nefarious, he's a streamer. And also a financial expert of Magic the Gathering. Or you would
Can we
like
go
to,
so
or you
far
would
as
like
to
to
say
be, right?
financial guru?
We could go.
Those are
We
some
could go
those
so
are some
far.
fancy words for reading numbers and making smart guesses.
Guru,
Matt, what
perfect.
guesses
We'll
have
go
you
with-
made that are really good?
Um, I, now you put me on the spot. I can't think.
No, it's
Leo-
it's
Leo
okay.
Volt
If you
was-
don't have an answer, that's fine.
Leovold was real. He was like $14 when I bought him, and he's
Okay.
50 plus now.
Really?
Good call. Yeah,
There's-
he's expensive.
You just have to. It's a lot of paying attention. It's a lot of guessing on trends, and sometimes you lose. Like I have a box full of times that I've lost. And
Huh?
cards.
Now, how do you actually keep up with the latest trends?
There's a lot of websites. There's a lot of writers. We have things like MTG Goldfish has a good price tracker, surprisingly, for being not a price website. And they update hourly. MTG Stocks updates daily, and they have a really good price tracker. Other than that, just checking TCG and like watching numbers and staying in the correct channels on Twitter and whatnot really help.
I always hated TCG, trying to keep up with that one.
It can definitely be a pain.
So it updates hourly. Is that really helpful for you? The hour.
Yeah, it's honestly surprising because the better ones don't update as often, and you kind of are left to guessing, and so you would have to go fill in gaps yourself on TCG Player, kind of looking at cards that were moving the day before. But Goldfish updating hourly, sometimes it gives some incorrect information or gives information that's not really relevant, but other times you can just see like a spike as it happens, like last night with Ugin the Spirit Dragon going up to $38 overnight. That was something that right as it happened at like 4 in the morning, MTG Goldfish was showing the price trends.
Oh, really?
Interesting. Now, is
Now,
is it difficult to track these rise trends? Like we see a lot of trends during like our banned and restricted announcements, like we just had last week. Is that especially a hard time to watch trends?
Ban and restriction announcements are really, like, they can be really hard. Things like Golgari Grave Troll being banned, I think a lot of people knew. I was ready for it with Golgari Thugs on TCG Player already. Because it's one of those things where like Wizards doesn't want to ban certain cards, and you can kind of get used to the trends and guess that cards like Prized Amalgam that are really the thing causing the deck to be pushed over the top aren't being banned because they're new and they still want them to be bought and sell packs. But cards like Golgari Grave Troll that's already been on the ban list before, it's an easy one to pick and just say like, let's get this.
Okay.
Banned twice.
Yeah, right. It's never come.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they unbanned that, it was like, oh, this sounds like a great idea, and then they
It was
printed
fine for a little
Grave Troll.
while.
Yeah, that was before Amalgam, and that was before.
It's
or
before Amalgam, before Catharic Reunion, and then it just got too strong.
Having another Narcomoeba really helped the deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I never really thought of it as that. It's basically just another Narcomoeba.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, or it's actually
And
even better.
There's the one at Haunted Dead that usually made it in the board as well. So
Yeah.
and the
There
seller in
were
the
some
main 60.
strong cards that pushed it over the top for sure.
I mean, speaking of these newer cards, I mean, and especially as you mentioned earlier with the price spike on Ugin, is it hard to forecast what a new set will do to card prices?
It definitely can be. There's some times where like you can see cards and just realize that they're gonna be crazy and that they've slot into decks. And other times it can be a lot more difficult. I can't think of anything too crazy in recent times. Liliana, I guess Liliana was a good one. She was kind of written off at first, and then everyone was just like, "This card's actually amazing in Modern, and this card's playable in Legacy." And now
Which
she's
Liliana?
The
Last Hope?
The Last Hope, or
yeah,
okay, so the recent one. Okay.
yes, like very recent. Like she just slots into decks, and like she's playable in any green black X or like
Right.
whatever deck in Modern. She's playable in 4-color Loam in Legacy. Like she's a playable card and and she's playable in Standard too. She's just really strong and versatile. That happened with Jace Vryn's Prodigy too. He was very incorrectly evaluated when he first came out, and then when people started to realize how good he actually was, he saw play all the way back in the Vintage. So
I never like talking about Jace Prodigy. I traded my foil pre-release Jace for Sensi's Divining Top when they were back at like $25 a piece.
that was one of my favorite specs. I think that might be the one that paid off the most for me. The weekend that it spiked, I had been at a GP and vendors were buying them at 25 or something, and I picked up like over 30 copies that weekend.
Wow.
Then what they settle at, like 80 for a while?
Yeah,
90?
exactly. I was trading like fetch lands for them.
Yeah, definitely. Now, like talking about Jace Vryn's Prodigy is a huge part of Frontier, and Adam and I, being part of Swiss Spirit Games, we're very much about playing Frontier and talking about Frontier, and I know that you've seen price jumps because of Frontier recently. Has that really been affecting prices? Like, let's look at like Jace Vryn's Prodigy, Ugin the Spirit Dragon, Hangerback Walker, Anafenza the Foremost are things that come to my mind right off the bat.
Yeah, for sure. Those cards really had settled. Their post-modern or post-standard play had really settled them. Like we were seeing Jace down at 25, and you had people selling them as low as 15 on different channels, and you would sorry about that.
Quite
You
all right.
would see people buying into Jace just because he was a modern playable card at $15 or below 20. It was like you were guaranteeing yourself money at that point. But seeing cards like Hangerback Walker and Anafenza see these like spikes, especially Hangerback Walker, that's definitely one that has spiked a lot more than people probably expected it to. But I don't know if we can say that they're entirely demand-based, and it really makes it hard to look at Frontier as a format that's like, there's so much demand that these cards are spiking when there are buyouts happening. Like Ugin the Spirit Dragon was a buyout. That was not a natural demand spike. That was someone went on, bought 50 copies at once.
Only 50? That's not bad.
But it's like cards like Jace was more of a buyout at first, and then people saw it and they said, well, I had better jump on this train because it was a slow burn. But cards like Anafenza and Soulfire Grandmaster may just be going up because of demand, and that's something that you can really tell when the trends are much slower, because when a card jumps 100% or something ridiculous like that, that's almost very guaranteed that it's a buyout, that there's multiple people going like, hey, we're going to get this card. Like, or someone sees it going up and they jump in on it. You know, there's a lot of bandwagoning in buyouts. But cards like smaller cards that move slowly over time are more likely to be seen as demand-based rather than a buyout.
So explain exactly what happens during a buyout, because some people may not know. Like, the concept...
Basically, me and my finance buddies will go on. I don't do it. I don't participate in buyout. But if I was a buyout person, we would go on whatever channel we have, whatever group that we're in, the 4 or 5 of us, high rollers with magic money. We would go and we'd say, like, look at this card. It looks like there's playable in all these formats. Ugin's a good one because he's seen a ton of play in Frontier. He's playable in Modern. He was a standard all-star. He's played in Legacy decks. So he's a good one, and you can kind of gauge it on like how much a set was open. Like Khan's cards didn't get bought out very often because that set was open into Oblivion. But the small set that came after it wasn't open nearly as much. So Mythics from that set are really good targets for buyouts. And so we would get together and we would just go on TCG Player and fill up a cart and just say like, all right, cool, we'll buy it out. Usually, if you were certain about a buyout, like beyond the shadow of a doubt, people start at Star City because no one watches Star City because their prices are all over the place.
Okay.
And you'd buy out Star City, and then you would go, and if you were like dead certain, like this card is underpriced and it's going to be 3 times what I'm paying for it, you could buy out the European market because everything moves slower over there, and then you would buy out TCG Player.
Oh, because
So
that's what
TCG
people,
is
that's
like
what people
the most
see
success.
last.
Yeah, very few people follow the European market and the Star City market, because Star City is kind of like an isolated thing.
Right.
Because other Channel Fireball and other places sell on TCG Player as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of their stores floating around, especially with I think they're like the Premier or TCG Premier or whatever that is.
Yeah, direct sell.
Direct, yeah. I know
Yeah, so I've
TCG
seen a
Direct
bunch
is
of
really
those.
helpful for local stores. Like my closest LGS that I enjoy does TCG Direct, and they make a lot of money off of it, and it's very beneficial for them. In terms of getting rid of cards that would not normally get rid of. I know it helps move a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's more beneficial because TCG has a deck builder interface, which then you buy all the cards for the deck.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's
definitely
more
cool.
useful for LGSs that have a lot of excess commons and uncommons. I mean, I was TCG
Even bulk rares.
Direct. Yeah, I mean, I was TCG Direct for a while, and I sold direct from there. The only thing is that sometimes you run into a couple issues with their interface, in which they will sell cards from you that you don't have in stock.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of complaints from that.
I mean, I've never had an Antiquities Urza's Tower. I never will have an Antiquities Urza's Tower, and yet somehow I sold 7 of them. So, I mean, I don't. It wasn't even listed on my site, so I don't really know. It's probably just those things that happen with that. But I mean, TCG Direct is a great source for especially LGSs and smaller places like that, because they're able to move a lot of cards at a very efficient rate without having to ship individual cards.
Yeah, which is why that it makes sense to watch TCG, because that's the movement of cards.
So everybody watches TCG. I mean, like, so many people that I know, even from trades and everything, will sit there and say, "Hey, what's the TCG mid on that?"
I always use TCG prices, where other people were like, "Let's use Star City price," and I'm like, "Why are you doing this? This doesn't make any sense."
Yeah, or eBay.
It's definitely a huge platform now, and it's become like a monster in Magic in general. Like, I think a big issue though now with TCG is that they're changed to market price instead of median is really hurting like some traders, because people would look at market price instead of median, and like maybe you feel like I'm sharking you if we trade at $13 for a card that's actually 17 at mid because you went off market price, and like that's the cash value that we're looking at, not the actual trade value of the card.
Yeah,
I've had that come up before. It was an interesting discussion.
I've had many interesting discussions about finance, especially trading from standard into modern or legacy, which is very rare to happen in my mind. I know a lot of people, they'll say, "Hey, look, I have X amount of let's say Emrakul the Promised Ends." I know it's just been banned, so the price has kind of been nerfed on that. But like, let's say I have a play set of this. Will you trade me, your play set of, let's say, Marsh Flats? And people just look at you like you're insane.
Well, obviously not that example. That's a bad example.
Well, no, I mean, I've had people do that. I've had people try to trade me for, the Arid Maces that I have. They're like, I have this standard card, that standard card. It's like, well, no, like.
I mean, so we had this conversation on Twitter too, and you're just it's a different mindset, because I went to GP Denver in December with a binder full of standard junk. My store that I work with is mostly modern and legacy. We don't do a lot of standard, but we have it all. So I took all this good extra standard stuff we had, and turned it into like straight modern playables because you talk to a store there that's there to trade, and they're doing standard every day of the week, and they need to fill their stock. And you just, like, they have arid maces that people are bringing them. They don't care about those. They need the new copters and Gideons and stuff. And you can find ways to make it work. With how big online trading is now, you can find ways to make trades work no matter what. If you have value in one format, you can get value in another. It requires the work, though.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that, and I know that from our Twitter conversation earlier, and from actually reflecting on it, I do realize that I was I was wrong. I know I don't admit that often, but I was wrong.
Okay.
But it is good for people to know that, you know, you can find the value for it. It's just you have to put in the effort too.
You also have to value the standard card. If you just are doing a straight value, like if you don't value having standard cards, then obviously you're not going to value the standard card for this card that it was hard for you to get or whatever.
Exactly.
Now you
have to find the right person. It's all about the right person that wants what you have.
Now, do you do mostly paper? You do all paper finances, or do you do online?
Yeah, I do not.
As well?
I do not buy or sell or trade Magic Online. I know a lot of people that do, and I'll make specs on there, but it's not something that I'm currently interested in because I want to see it more as a platform to play Magic, rather than a platform for finance.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's mostly because for a really long time I would always tell people like, oh, I'm not a Magic player. Like they'll see me at a GP or a Star City and like, hey, are you playing? Like, oh no, I don't play Magic. Like that's crazy. And I really enjoy Magic. Magic is not just numbers and finance to me. It's a game that I love and enjoy and want to play more.
Right.
And if I start to look at like Magic Online, like just another business front, I'm just gonna sit there all day and try and do business on Magic Online.
Right, and that makes it so it takes away from your the enjoyable playing aspect as well. Now, do you go to a lot of GPs and trade? Is that like your majority way you offload?
I try to do a GP every quarter, just because I don't have the stock to do them more often. So, like this upcoming quarter is really busy for me in my area because we have a Star City in Dallas in March, followed by a local 10K, followed by Team Unified Modern in San Antonio.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of like back to back busy. I trade for a store. So other than that, I sit at home on Facebook and find cards that we're out of stock on, and then I'll take our excess and overflow to a GP, and I straight trade. I am not one of those people that devalues your cards. Your cards are worth as much as mine are. That's a principle that I really stand behind. And I'll just go to a GP and I'll still make enough money for it to be worth it for both of us.
Oh, so you're the person that I should be trading with all these years.
Yeah, probably.
Not the I'm going to trade you 10 cards, but because I'm trading you 10 cards for one, you know, that one is more valuable.
It happens. And those people are a necessary evil in the world, and I understand what they're trying to do. Some of my closest friends in the trading world are people who value trade. It's not something I want to do. But they are definitely... The reason that they do it is because that is their job. That is their livelihood, is to have everything in stock and then make a little bit more when they do their trade so that they can take it home and pay for everything.
Okay, yeah. Makes sense. Now, we going back to Frontier, I want to address this. I think this is an important thing to address. One of the appeals of Frontier as a starting format was all these old standard cards that aren't devalued now, like Manus Riders that are cheap, this or that are cheap, Soulfires that are cheap. Like all these cards were cheap and they're devalued because they're not standard, but they're not really modern playable. Now we have seen a lot of we have seen a lot of increases.
Words are hard for Z sometimes.
We are the increases.
We have seen increases in many modern non-playables. Hello. Many modern non-playables. If this trend continues, Yeah, I know, it's a very sad thing, Lila. If this trend continues, where these cards that aren't modern playable but are Frontier playable keep rising, do you see Frontier being an issue, having the same issues as modern in terms of financial aspect of it?
I think the first question you have to ask yourself when we talk about price of a format is, where is it too expensive? Where are we saying? Should I wait? Should I finish?
No, keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where are we saying that, like I remember Standard being called too expensive when cons, fetches, and 5-color Standard was happening, and decks were $1,200. And I know, looking at Frontier, some of these decks are already going up there. There are decks in Frontier that are over $500 right now. So where are we calling it? If you're buying into a format, where are we saying that this price point is too far for anyone to buy into?
Right. And I think it's different for everyone, obviously, because everyone has different finances. But it depends. Do you think it like takes away from some of the appeal of Frontier?
I think the appeal of Frontier is going to be there for in two different fronts. I don't think that the appeal of Frontier was ever about it being a cheap format. I think the appeal of Frontier is that we need something different because people are either tired of Modern, and Standard was awful until recent banned and restricted updates.
Right.
You saw Wizards did a Standard rating, and every pro that played Magic told them to ban Emrakul, that it just wasn't correct.
Right.
And thankfully they listened. And then the other front is people who had these Standard decks, because Standard is ultimately an awful format to be into, price wise. Because if you look at it, you're spending $500-$600 every other year to keep up to date with Standard. Or you're trading for that much in cards that no longer are worthwhile after they rotate out, right? So Frontier kind of gives that added benefit of like, oh, well, I still have these collecting companies. I'm not playing Modern. Modern's whatever for me. I don't want to play it. But I have collecting companies. I have Jaces. I have all of this good playable stuff that I can't carry over into Modern, or I don't want to, and now I have another avenue for me to take that.
Right. And I think going back to what you were saying about the appeal of Frontier, maybe that was the appeal for some people, but for me, approaching it, the appeal was, cool, another format with a new spin, with a new focus. Because if you look at formats, each format has a focus, right? Standard's all the new cards. Let's try out these cool new interactions. Modern, you have like a very like spell/creature tempo game going on. You go more into like a combo type style in Legacy. You know, you have, because your interactions are crazy. But like Frontier is very creature based, like fair magic, I like to say.
Sure. That's a very correct measure of the formats.
Yeah, and so I think having this other format that has another appeal is really cool, and at least for me, because I stream Magic a lot. I like to have variety when I stream Magic a lot, and having another thing that I'm able to stream is huge. Like, there's times when I don't want to do Modern, don't want to play Standard, and don't want to draft. Well, otherwise I wouldn't have time. I wouldn't have anything to do. Now I get to play Frontier with Murph on, for Swisspear Games, and it's amazing because like that provides me another thing to do, more decks to brew, more decks to play, and that's an appeal that I really enjoy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
For me personally too, at least with Frontier, it's a format that I can really dive into. I can, brew. I can make crazy decks. I can, pick up the cards that I'm missing, which then allows me to play Standard. Because I used to never play Standard ever, because for the reasons that you said, it was just, why pay X amount of dollars in order to play for 3-4 months and then have a new deck come out and then have a new deck come out and have to keep trading and keeping up with the finance and everything. For me, that wasn't enjoyable, personally speaking. So now I'm able to say, hey, this deck is good. And I have all these cards that are left over from when I did do draft and when I did actually play Standard. And now I'm actually able to play Standard again without having the repercussion of, well, now I have to get rid of this deck because this deck is no good anymore, or this deck isn't, performing well anymore.
Right. Yeah. So eventually that will happen. Eventually, it'll happen to Frontier. Well, with the same problem, Modern. Like, it eventually will get too old, and the standard cards won't like flow into it as highly. But for right now, that's a cool thing, and I know that we've enjoyed Tuesday nights, Murph.
Oh yeah, it's been great.
Right. So back to you, Matt. Let's one last question for you. What format most excites you to cover? Like, because I know you're talking about how standard you don't really like to cover, or do you? Like, what is your favorite format from a financial aspect?
Financially, I think Modern is probably the best. We see a lot of trends and a lot of like new weird stuff that you wouldn't sometimes expect. Just because it is kind of still a growing format, because new cards are always added, and new cards may add and change something, like Prized Amalgam being added to the card pool really made Dredge playable again, right?
Right.
So,
Eldrazi Winter is so much fun.
Eldrazi Winter, exactly, things like that. So these things really cause the format to change and reshape often, and we see new cards come on top and new cards getting banned or unbanned or anything, all causes price fluctuation that you don't really get in any other format. I think that'd be followed up by Legacy as a close second, because I love Legacy. Legacy's like my heart joy, and it's the same thing. It's slower than Modern in terms of like new decks coming to light and things like that. But recently we had Louisville happen, and the most played deck on Magic Online right now is this 12th place Bug Delver deck.
That deck is really cool.
That they're playing, yeah, and it's very strong right now, and it's just like a new, or even like Reed Duke's deck or Black Red Reanimator, like all of those are new ways to look at the format, which is crazy in a format that old that we're still getting.
I mean, how many years of cards does that format have? Like,
what, Magic is 23 years old,
right? So
24 years old, or something.
Yeah,
and like we get like a new brew of lands now that people are playing Mindslaver in. We have a new brew of like Alurin that doesn't play Recruiter combo. It just is value with Shardless Agent. Like there's so many
Alurin's so fun.
There's so many decks that come out still in a format that old that really shows like the livelihood of Magic, I think, and being able to have decks still coming into a format that's that old and has powerful cards like Force of Will, and you can turn one Storm people, but you can also come over and play a fair deck with Leovold in it.
Right. That's very cool. I've actually never had the chance to get into Legacy, and I plan on doing so eventually in the next few months, as I had now had the opportunity to. But like, it is something I want to do, and I don't know about you, Murph, but I would like to check that out eventually.
I love Legacy. One of my first kitchen table decks, I guess, would be considered a Legacy deck when I did Elves with Skull Clamp and would draw the entire library, and then play Laboratory Maniac, and then clamp another elf and just win. That was my kitchen table deck. It was so fun. My friends would leave the room and do something else while I was going through all the motions of it. They're just like, I don't want to do this.
What good friends. They let you go through it instead of scooping.
Yeah, no, they're just like, yeah, you have fun with that. I'm gonna go and play some Halo or something. I'm like, thanks. I'll call you in 20 minutes. Just real quick, Matt, and we do appreciate you stopping by. Are we to expect more streaming from you?
Yeah, for sure. I was really sad to have my Modern deck banned from under me. Following the Git Probe ban, I could no longer play Blue-Red Kiln Fiend combo prowess deck or whatever.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I have a friend who wants to play Magic Online who really loves Legacy like me and doesn't mind allowing me to use his cards. So we recently have picked up Blue-Red Delver and Grixis Delver and plan on building more decks in the Legacy format. So I currently have a streaming schedule of Monday and Tuesday that I try to adhere to, 10 p.m. And I want to play more Magic, and I used to be a professional StarCraft player, or semi-professional StarCraft player, and I would stream often, and I really liked interacting with viewers and stuff like that. So being able to do that again in a more meaningful way with like Magic, you can talk about the plays and everything a little bit more than you could with StarCraft.
Right.
That's something I really look forward to doing. And also, there's not enough Legacy streamed right now on Magic Online.
I agree. Yeah.
And I aim to fix that.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. And so if you guys want to check him out, please check him out. I think he's great. Please just hit that follow button on his channel. And that's twitch.tv/
Matt Nafarious.
Matt Nafarious, just like that. We'll have that link below the video. Thank you for checking out the A to Z podcast today. If you were watching on teamnfgbot.com, go check out our YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, please go check out teamnfgbot.com. Both Adam and I sponsor. And also check out the Rogues Gallery, which Adam and I are both part of. You can check out Adam and I at AmerofCS and ZMagic94 on Twitch and Twitter. They're right above our faces. Right here. Let's give it up for that. And so join us next week as we discuss Aether Revolt and all that's going on there. So as always, just thank you, and thank you, Matt, for joining us today.
Thank
and
you.
everyone have a great week.